everyone. Welcome to Authenticity in Action. I am so excited to highlight the stories of people who are becoming their favorite versions of themselves and making their dreams come true. My name is Audrey Kramer. I'm with Audrey Kramer Coaching. And today I am so honored and excited to share with you our first guest with a T, Lacie Lou Books. This is Lacie. Lacie, thank you so much for coming. Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited when you reached out and offered to have me on your podcast. I was so excited because I just love chatting with you, and I thought this would be really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are a budding author. You've published, or you're about to publish, your second book. So excited about that. So tell us a little bit about your books.
Awesome. This is probably going to be a little eclectic because I'm terrible at elevator pitches.
Cool,
but
all good.
we're gonna run with it. So I've written the first two books of a dark fantasy trilogy that takes place in a land where, if you think with me about if Earth was a deity and the continents of Earth were each children of that deity and deities themselves that had different magic systems. That is the world that my trilogy takes place in. So each country has a magic system and its citizens have that magic as well. But the first book and all of the main action of the trilogy takes place in a land that's actually missing its magic. It's been lost for about a century. It's plagued by darkness. It's ruled by a cruel council that, spoiler alert, are not the good guys, even though they think they are. And so the action kind of kicks off with the main character, Aliana, losing her family in a siege of her village, with the warriors of that not so great cult council taking over her people. And she's set on this quest of vengeance against them for the slaughter of her family. Sorry, heavy topics. Or should have came with the trigger warning. So she's set with the choice of vengeance against these men to avenge her people, or actually choosing to trust them as they believe she is the chosen one meant to restore magic to their land and heal all of the darkness that's been invading it. So that's kind of the whole premise of the trilogy, is Eliana going on this quest to understand who she is, what is the prophecy, who are these other warriors whose point of views you also get in the trilogy, and just kind of how all of this comes together. So it's a really dark, epic adventure. There's very little romance throughout the trilogy. It's kind of like a subplot. So for those who are more familiar with fantasy books having a lot of romance right now, probably not going to be for you. This is more of the sword and shield, prophecy, epic quest type fantasy.
Yeah. And to be honest, I did not miss the lack of romance at all. A lot of times it's just kind of expected, oh, these two people are going to fall in love and it's going to be this story. And it's you don't even miss it because you're just so caught up in the plot and the drama and all of the magic and magic, both literally in the book and just the magic of your writing. It was so fun to read the first book. And then I was okay, well, when's the second one coming out? And then I got the chance to read the second one before it got published. And I am dying. I'm you can't leave me like this. So it's just been so much fun. And definitely we'll put a plug at the end for people to find your books because I think it's fantastic. So how did you get inspired to become a writer? Because it's not something that people are just oh, that's my full-time job, unless you have this idea of this is what I want to do. So how did you kind of figure out that's what you wanted?
That's a really good question. I think I've always been a storyteller. I was the kid who could take any set of toys, play dinosaurs at my aunt's house and create this really complex society for them that would be at war with one another over food or resources and all this crazy stuff. And I'm talking
already starting years. Dark.
Yeah. We had a fascination with the macabre from the beginning, I guess. But I think I've always just naturally been a storyteller. I like making up stories. I sing little parody songs to my cats because I just think it's fun to kind of be creative and riff off of other things. And so I think it was really natural for me to want to to tell those stories. Writing, actually, I never would have taken the steps to become an author if it wasn't for a roommate I had shortly after college. So she had been participating in this event that challenges writers to write a certain set of words like every day, and then like eventually you have like a full finished novel, and that's like fantastic. And she was participating in it, and she was like, "Hey, why don't you try it too?" And so that was in 2018. And that is what kicked off my love for actually writing down my stories. So previous to that, I really wrote poetry for myself, and then just liked to like tell stories and be silly. But I had never like sat down and written a whole book. And so that was like really inspiring for me, just having done that experience. And that kind of kickstarted this idea of like, what would it be like to like write full time? And so it's been a journey the last 6 years trying to be able to get to that point. I'm still not at the point of being a full-time author, but I would love to eventually make that transition from my career as a project manager into being an author.
Yeah. And I think, you know, a lot of us have our day job, or what we call our bridge job, right? To say, okay, this is what I'm going to do while I'm working on my passion project on the side. And I remember inviting you over, I think it was in 2018, that first, and we were just
Yeah.
like sitting on the couch typing together. And it was just so cool to be in that shared space. But I know that you also had some challenges, that you started writing in 2018, and like you had to scrap the whole thing and start over. So, talk about a little bit how you overcame those setbacks.
Yeah. So timeline 2018, finished the first manuscript. Total total different book that has never actually seen the full light of day as a published product. And then I finished that. I moved on to writing the second book in that trilogy, finished that, and actually started writing the third book of that trilogy. And was partly into that third book when the pandemic hit. And quite a lot of things happened in a very short amount of time in the beginning of 2020 for me. I lost my beloved aunt, who was a major inspiration for me as a reader, as a quirky, creative person. I lost my grandmother, who was the only person aside from my mother who had read in total the original trilogy, you know, up to the point of what I had written. She was a big supporter of me, like my first, like number one big fan. Um, and losing her in 2020, as well as being isolated and locked down, like just kind of killed the creative juices. I know a lot
Yeah.
of people in the pandemic really blossomed during that time. You know, he had time at home, had nothing else to do. So
Mhm.
they went to hobbies and found passions. I lost mine. And that was really, really hard to come back from. My book was always in the back of my mind that whole time, but every time I tried to sit down and reread what I had written so I could pick back up again, I like could type like 10 words and I was like, I'm just not feeling it. And I would go do something else.
Yeah.
And that's really hard to like be in that place. And so I kind of sat in that space for about 2 years. And then my husband, who knew I had written like this original trilogy, was like, we were talking one day and we're like, you know, like, what do we want to do in life? Like, what are some big goals for us that are like outside of career focus, that are just more like passions we want to nurture? And I talked more about my book, and he was like, well, why don't you just try again? Um,
You're like,
so
I've done that.
I've done that. Yeah, right. Like I've done that like 10 times. But it was the beginning of 2023. And so I picked it back up. And my goal last year was just, I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to pick up book one as it is. And I'm just going
Mhm.
to edit it so that it's not like a crapshoot of grammatical errors. Because
Right.
just because you can write stories does not mean you are good at editing them.
Yeah.
Self-editing is in and itself a very important skill that I'd continue to nurture. So I picked it back up and I was like, okay, like I'll start again. And I realized really quickly that my voice as an author had changed dramatically. Um, and that in and of itself was something to grapple with, where I had this like kind of light um, adventure trilogy that had a little bit of darkness to it, but was for the most part like I would consider more like a noble bright epic instead of
Mm-hmm.
grimdark.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I just realized like I did not resonate with that character. I didn't really resonate with that storyline anymore.
Yeah.
So I scrapped the whole project. And I picked the bones out of that project that I liked, which became the bones for book 1, and I brought props. So this is
Nice. I've got my prop over here and then my other prop right here. So
perfect. So the failed first trilogy, and I shouldn't say failed, the put aside trilogies that walked so that this one could run, the bones of it are in here. So some of the scene, some of like the gauntlet that 2 of the warrior characters go through, that is from the original trilogy, just kind of amped up in the darkness and terror level. And so that was really hard to do, but basically I just like started fresh. I got a new
and that was in
concept.
2023.
Yeah,
Like
that was
that was just last year.
January. Yeah, that was January last year.
And you're already 2 books published. Like that is absolutely insane. That's amazing.
Yes, yeah. So it's I can't even like wrap my head around that sometimes. So yeah, 2023, I scrapped the plot of the original trilogy. I wrote Prophecy of Blood and Flames, and I published that in April of 2024. And so that still has all the same world. Like my world didn't really change. It was just characters and what they were doing and what the actual storyline of that world was changed.
Yeah.
So I still had years of background and lore that I had built out for the original trilogy that I was able to build off of, and that like really helped. So a lot of times people hear, "Oh my gosh, you published 2 books in like less than 2 years." Yes
Well,
and
not
no,
really.
not really. I published 2 books in 6 years.
Yeah.
I took that break, and that break was really, really necessary for me. I needed that time to grieve. I needed that time to grow as a person as well. I spent a lot of time in the pandemic changing a lot of my lifestyle choices to make myself healthier mentally, emotionally, physically. And that has bled very naturally into my writing and into the characters, where all of those heavy emotions, the grief, the vengeance, the forgiveness, redemption, all of that is portrayed really vividly on the page, because I think it's really important to portray those things. It's healthy to grieve, and there's lots of ways to do that. It's very healthy to be mad about sad things, but how you kind of walk through and handle that is really key in your
Yeah.
processing journey. And so I kind of just bared that all out in my books. And so they are not a fluffy read, but they're a good like cuddle up with like something warm and a blanket kind of read, and be willing to sit in your emotions because they do sit with you.
Well, and I think, we hear all the time, especially recently, like authenticity is so important and being real is so important because people can tell when you're being fake, right? And people can tell when you're just pulling things out of your rear end to make somebody else happy and, hiding your emotions so that you look like a certain kind of person in front of other people. And so I think it's so critical the work that you did to say, you know what? Grief is a real thing and anger is a real thing, and we shouldn't try to just stuff those down and like, here's how the people in this world, through extension of myself and my experiences, have handled this, to like say that it's okay for this to be a thing and it's okay to lean on other people for support, and it's okay to be angry, it's okay to be sad. So I really enjoyed kind of following that through actually both of the books now, so that's awesome.
Yeah, I really enjoyed writing it. I think it was like really cathartic for me to take that time, be able to process that, and then pour it into books that people are able to connect with. I think it's really important to find that. I know it's not for everyone, and that's okay. Like I wrote this for myself. This is a love letter to myself. And for anyone who like comes along and enjoys it, like I'm just grateful you're here.
Yeah.
I I have set no expectations of this like blowing up and coming huge. because I'm just really humbled that anyone was willing to take a chance on it. I think a lot of times now it's really easy for readers that I interact with online, like primarily on Instagram and Bookstagram, really easy for them to like put you up on a pedestal because you're an author. And that's like so crazy and important. And it is really cool, right? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of love that's been put into writing, but I'm also still just a person. And I'm really uncomfortable in that spotlight. So I think for me, like I've just worked really hard to, like, as you were saying, like be authentic. Like even in my online persona, I share my sales report every month. And it's not high sales, which is to be expected. I'm a small fish in a really, really big pond. And online, especially when you're marketing your book, you're shouting into a void. So I was not expecting to like hit it big and go viral or anything crazy like that. But I think it really helps people, especially other authors who are just starting out, and like maybe they're sitting and thinking like, oh my gosh, I've only sold one book this month, and like, am I just a failure? Do people just hate me? And it's like, that's actually kind of an average month. Like you sold a book. That's amazing. There's lots of people who like may not even have that every month. And so I share that to be authentic and just very transparent of like, here's my journey. Here's how I'm doing. I don't make millions off of my book. So anybody who says that, like, please hand me your millions that you have sitting around that you think I have been owed. I would love that.
Yeah, but I also remember distinctly seeing you do a video recently, brand new author, right? You started publishing this year, and you got your book in Barnes and Noble on the shelves, which is a huge deal. And then you went to go like sneak sign copies, and there weren't any left. Like it was sold out. So just to all those aspiring authors out there, Lacie has done a fantastic job with like marketing and promotion and putting her message out on social media. And because she's authentic and because she shares from that place, like she's actually been pretty successful. So I'm really excited about that. That being said, there's always that glamorous side of social media and what you post, and people are like, oh, it's sunshine and rainbows. She sold out at Barnes and Noble, and this is, her first book on the shelves. But obviously there's been a lot of learning curve to that, right? Like learning how to do marketing, learning how to self-publish because you self-publish. So talk a little bit about some of those learning curves that you had along the way.
Oh my gosh.
That's a loaded question.
That's such a loaded question. I was start with saying every piece of this has been a learning curve. There is not a single part of this process, not even the writing, that has come completely naturally. Because it's just a lot to learn. And when you're one person and you're trying to be the writer, the editor, the publisher, the marketer, the hype woman, the salesperson, like, give me all the hats, right? I have all of them. What is the learning curve? I think for me, it was a lot of like finding other authors who seem to have gotten some piece of it right. Like maybe they were still figuring out the whole picture too, right? We're all trying to figure out the whole picture, but maybe they figured out like one piece, and it's like, okay, like let me go over here and like ask this person like, hey, how did you do this? And I just did that a lot. Like I think the best way to learn anything is to just know nothing and ask a lot of questions and be really vulnerable about that, right? It's hard when you feel like you need to come off as having known everything that you needed to do. And it's really easy online, especially, to feel that pressure when all people see is your success, and you know how much you cried in the shower trying to get to the point where you're at. So you're like, am I really that successful? I don't know. So for me, it was just like, okay, well, I don't know how to, I don't know where even to print my book. So let me go find someone who's done that, and let me go ask what they did and why. I didn't know how to get a cover. So let me go find an author whose cover I like. Let me see how they did it, and let's go do that too. I didn't know how to hand out art copies. So an advanced reader copy, that's something very common in the publishing world. You give copies out in advance for free in exchange for an honest review across review platforms. How in the world do you distribute that? securely so that I keep the rights to my book. The reader gets to enjoy
Yeah.
it. I had to go learn how to do that. Had to get a map. I had to get a formatting tool. And there are lots of those out there, but how do you choose the right one? Well, I just started asking authors, well, what tool do you use? Do you like it? What don't you like about it? And I just aggregated like all of this information from lots of different resources. And I put that all together and I was like, okay, I kind of feel like I know the process and now I have the tools. So like, let's just go try
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And so we tried it for this book. And I actually went and I got a map. See, I told you I brought props. And
Yeah.
this is a postcard that I printed through Canva. But this was actually originally supposed to be in the book. I'm not tech savvy. I may work for a tech company, but I'm not the technical person. I manage projects. And even my tech savvy husband was having a real hard time with getting the formatting tools and the printing services to accept the size and the format of the map on the page.
Yeah.
And that was really stressful. You think you're like, I'm at the finish line. I've got everything figured out. I got my map. I got my book. I got my cover. Everything's ready. And then
Yeah.
you like go to submit it and they just keep flagging an error. And you're like, well, what does this error mean? Why can't I fix it? And then I fiddled and my husband fiddled with this map for days. And it just got to the point where if I didn't submit a manuscript that the printing service would approve,
Mm-hmm.
I was going to miss my release deadline for my first book. And that
Yeah.
felt like a lot of pressure as a new person. I'm trying to like set myself up well, right? I don't want to like come out the gate and immediately miss the ball with
Yeah.
readers. I made a really hard choice and I debated about it. I cried over it. I cried on camera, talking about it on social media.
Yeah.
I had to choose to not put the map in the book. And that was a really hard choice because it was something I was really excited about. But I learned that sometimes you just need to give yourself grace. And you also
Mm-hmm.
need to give yourself maybe a lot more wiggle room than you think you need.
Yeah.
I'm still working out that part.
Yeah.
uh,
I
I'm
think that's a forever work in progress.
Yes, give yourself like way more time than you think you need, because random hiccups will always happen and you won't expect them, and then they do, and now you're scrambling, and no one likes to be in the scramble, right? You don't like being in the frying pan,
Yeah.
cooking
Yeah.
up, freaking out.
Yeah.
Um, so I think like in those moments, my biggest learning curve was like finding how to give myself grace as I was learning.
Yeah.
Um, because I didn't have all the answers. And no matter how much I want to have all the answers, because I'm a people pleaser and a perfectionist, and not having the answers is like literally my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Um, it's just all about giving yourself the grace as you're learning and being honest and transparent about that so that
Yeah.
people understand where you're coming from, right? Like I didn't not put the map in the book because I like really loved the idea of spending extra money to print a map postcard.
Right.
I don't
And it's
even
nice to
charge for
hold
this.
it next to the book because then you can look at it and read at the same time instead of flipping back and forth. So there's like a hidden benefit there. But yeah.
Yeah, it has been serendipitous in that way for sure. And I don't even charge for it. If you buy the book off my Etsy or if you meet me in person, I just gave you the map. I'm like, here you go. I wish I could give it to everyone who orders from other platforms.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I have no way of doing that.
Yeah.
So I try my best to make it work. And it's, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, I think, is there anything else you'd like to ask about that? I feel like there's like more I could say.
No,
I just like totally lost my train of thought.
I
'Cause
love it. I love it. And so many good nuggets in there, like definitely giving yourself grace because we are oftentimes hardest on ourselves. We're our own worst critics. So I think that's a super huge piece. And then, also like realizing there are no stupid questions. Like if you want to get something done and you don't have the answer, there are no stupid questions. Just ask the question. And two, like, well, I guess three now, right? Is you're not alone. you can't do this alone. You need the community of other people. You need them as resources. You need their support, their encouragement, their knowledge, and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm super proud of you for handling all of that, dealing with it, and also just making your dreams come true, which is so, so cool. And I know you're also very proud of yourself, and absolutely you should be. So what does it mean to you that your dream of becoming a published author has come true?
Oh, you guys have so many good questions. I really appreciate it. They're very thought provoking.
I watched too many interviews, so I'm like, ooh, I can answer this.
No, I love it. You're doing a great job of leading the podcast and leading me through this. What does it mean for me to have my dreams come true? That feels like it should be a really easy question to answer. And
Yeah, another loaded one. I'm good at that, apparently.
and it that's okay. But it really isn't easy to answer. It means a lot of things. I think first and foremost, I'm just really, really grateful to to be in a position where I was able to publish a book in a short amount of time. I saved up. I was able to do that. That in and of itself is a big accomplishment. That's not always easy for other authors. And so I'm really grateful that I was able to do that and be in a position that made it accessible for me to pursue this dream alongside my job.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to me to have done it?
Like when your first book got like finally published, like I'm sure there were tears of joy because I would have just been crying so hard to be like, this is so incredible and amazing. And I'm so proud of myself. But like, what are some of the thoughts and emotions you had that first day that you published and you're like, I'm here, I did it?
It's surreal. Honestly, it's very surreal. I was really excited, and I'm to be honest, like also like supremely anxious.
Yeah,
Um,
okay.
I have anxiety, and it's really hard to be perceived. It's really hard to put something out there and have other people experience it, and then they form their own opinions on it. And as a creative, how do you separate yourself as the person from the product that you've
Yeah.
put out in the world to be judged?
Yeah.
So I really grappled with that for actually a while. So that kind of like overshadowed the whole like, holy cow, I'm a published author, like amazingness. I definitely feel it, but at the same time, it's kind of an undertone of like, oh my gosh, people are like reading the book I wrote. Like it's in a freaking Barnes and Noble. Like,
Right, right. And if they don't like it, clearly they don't like me. That's
yes, yes, that's such an easy like assumption to jump to. And so it's honestly been spending a lot of time since April just like coaching myself through like I did the thing, I wrote the book I wanted to write. Not everyone is going to like it, and that's okay. That doesn't mean
yeah.
they don't like me.
Yep.
And so like having to like talk myself through that. But I think what it means for me to have done this is just showing myself that I could, putting myself out there. It's really vulnerable to be creative,
Yeah.
and to share that art. And writing is a form of art. So I think showing myself that I could do it. There were a lot of periods in my life where I didn't really see that light, where like there was something bigger and cooler that I could accomplish for myself and could share with others. Um, so to be in a place where I've been able to do that once and now almost twice later this week, with the
Yeah.
second book, I lost my headphone, is really, really, really impactful. I'm just really humbled by it. Like I don't take anything for granted because I know it's all a lot of work.
Mhm.
And it takes me writing the book as much as it takes readers being willing to engage with it and share it and support it. Um, so I think it's just a really, really cool experience to have that. And I will share, and I'm sorry, I'm going on a ramble, Audrey.
Nope,
So
go for it. I'm here for
um,
it.
um, so Eliana, the main character in the trilogy, she is asexual. I also identify as asexual. And it was really, really important for me to have a character like that in fantasy. You don't really see that identity portrayed very often in books, or as a main character,
Yeah.
especially. Oh, yeah.
Hopefully I don't throw you off your train of thought, but
Mm-mm.
can you just explain for people who aren't familiar with that term as compared to like bisexual or homosexual or those types of things? Like, can you just explain a little bit what the difference is?
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Just throwing out terms. So asexuality is a lack of sexual attraction to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would like kind of characterize it as you think someone is pretty for their aesthetic,
Mm-hmm.
not because you have like any desire to pursue something past that with them.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So I think it's a hidden identity. Sorry, it's a complicated thing to explain, but at the same time, it's not. I think it's just like
Yeah.
very misconstrued as like the shy, weird person that just never has found the right one. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that's not necessarily true. To make a long story short, I'm married. I am in a very loving romantic relationship with my husband. Um, and that is like a fantastic and wonderful thing. And I think that's like a common misconception that just because I may not be sexually attracted to people
Mm-hmm.
means I can't be romantically interested
Yeah.
in someone. Those are not the same thing. I think it's very commonly misconstrued that those are one and the same. They're not.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind
Cool.
of,
Just wanted to get like a baseline so
yeah.
people are like, okay, wait, what does that actually mean? And I think it's really important to have that distinction. So thank you. Hopefully I didn't throw you too much off your train of thought.
No, you're good. So Eliana is asexual. I really wanted to see my own identity portrayed in a book. And I kind of took that one step further with the trilogy, and I actually added a lot of other queer identities that are both main and side characters, um, and nonverbal and deaf representation, because
Yeah.
I feel like there's just such a tendency in fantasy to only show able bodied persons, and straight cis relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And if a gay character is ever introduced, they're kind of like sidelined. They're also more stereotyped. So I just wanted to show like queer characters and nonverbal and deaf characters being cool, holding the swords, fighting the monsters, having the epic adventure, um,
They're
and have it
totally
be.
cool, by the way. And you made it so easy to follow in the writing because especially on the page, like sometimes it's really hard to like follow conversations or figure out who's speaking at any given time. And then to add that added element of, oh, well, they're actually using sign language instead of speaking out loud or their own little language that they've made together, or, you know, this person uses they, them pronouns or whatever way that's written out, like it wasn't confusing to me to read at all. Like it all flowed very naturally. So it's so fantastic that one, you're bringing that representation in, but that two, it was like so seamless to go in there that you don't even really like, you notice that it's there because it's not a common thing in writing at all or in books, but it's just so well done. So that's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. I think it was just really important to have like a queer normative world where there's no like need to like out one another or other one another. It's just
Yeah.
everyone's here, everyone's accepted, everyone's a part of the community.
Yeah.
Um,
And there's enough
this,
othering in the book between like all the different clashes and wars. And it's like, we definitely don't need to bring that into, you know, the personal sphere. So really cool.
yes, yeah. And I think for me, like it may be more so than like personal accomplishment. I think that actually is my dream come true. There we go. We finally got around to it. It was a complicated
Yeah.
question. Um,
I knew if we
and
kept talking long enough. No. That's awesome.
I think just being able to create fantasy that is for everyone is so uh, important to me. It's so central to the messaging of my book, um, and in general, like what I plan to continue writing is just fantasy that is both representative of every walk of life experience and very accessible to every person. I want to show like how beautiful it can be when everyone of different identities, different abilities just comes together and it just thrives, right? I mean, yes, they're fighting monsters and kind of like fighting for their lives, but they're doing
But
it
that's a regular book.
together, and that's a regular book. That's what fantasy is, right?
Yeah.
So I think like for me that's my dream come true is just really adding representation of all of these identities into the larger narrative of storytelling, and putting them into the record of history as identities that were here, that did cool things, even in a fantasy sphere. And I think that, yeah, there you go. That's my dream come true. Sorry, really long, convoluted way of getting there, but we made it eventually.
No, cool. I love it. I love it. I love it. And it's so, so important. Now, I know you said, your husband's been kind of by your side and helping you through this whole thing. And then, your grandmother and your aunt also being really big inspiration, supporters, and all of that stuff. So, who else were some of your biggest cheerleaders? And then why was that so important?
Such a great question. I say this every time. Sorry, I'm like a broken record on answering it that way, but
I'll soak it all in. I'll soak it all in.
just keep bringing the praise on. Um, I, honestly, like my biggest supporters. So I would say my roommate that got me started in this wacky journey in 2018. There wouldn't be any of this if she hadn't said, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did this together, right?" As like a friend thing.
Yeah.
So having her support, having her nudge into writing was really, really instrumental for me. Like I owe her so much. Um, and she knows it. I tell her every time. Like there wouldn't be this if there hadn't been your support, and your encouragement to put myself out of my comfort zone. Um, it's all of my like collective friend group. I think I've just naturally over the years really built up this like beautiful bubble of support that just spans so many different people, um, that I just feel very comfortable being myself in. And
Yeah.
I'm weird and I'm quirky and
Don't ever change.
yeah, exactly. Like I feel like I have that space. Like you've been such a fantastic and wonderful cheerleader, even from afar all these years. And I'm just so grateful that we've gotten to reconnect and like really talk more. It means a lot to me. Like I love how that like kind of just naturally happens sometimes. And it's like really nice
Yeah.
when people who are maybe been on the periphery for a while kind of come back in a little closer and you get to reconnect. That's so special. And that my book has been able to do that for me with multiple friendships means so, so much. Like,
Yeah.
so incredible. I will give a shout out to BC Taylor. She is another author in this space. I call her my like Yoda, because when I was writing Prophecy of Blood and Flames, especially, she was the person that I went to for a lot of those questions of like, how do you do this thing? Or how do you do that thing?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those questions would come at like 10 at night in a panic induced, like, I can't fall asleep because I'm like fixating on this like thing that
You're
is just
still
like,
awake, right? I saw the little green dot. Please talk to me.
yeah, exactly. And she was, because she's like a late night person.
Nice. Perfect.
Yeah. So if I was
You
like,
should
if I
always have
messaged
at least one late night friend in your life.
honestly, yes. Like you need that one person who's like weird and will message you at 2 a.m. to answer your question. So Brooklyn was that for me. And that just means so, so much. That I had her support. I asked her so many questions. We've done author events together. So it's just been really, really fun having her support in a physical space.
Mm-hmm.
I've also had the support digitally of a lot of other authors as I've built out my little community in Bookstagram. Um, and it's just so beautiful. Kind of going back to your earlier comment about authenticity, just by being my weird, quirky self online, I've like naturally garnered a little bubble of about like 50 like really good, very active followers. And I know like that might sound like a really small number, but that means like if there were all 50 of them in the physical room with me right now, I would be a sobbing
Yeah.
mess.
That's huge though. I mean,
Um,
there's so many people online that you're like, I don't know this person and I don't know that like they could be a bot. Who knows? So to have like 50 genuine people who you just put yourself on there out there and you're like, this is me, this is who I am as a person, this is my mission, this is my message, and they are like, I will follow you, and they're actual real people. Like, that is so cool.
It's been so, like, it's been honestly so rewarding to be able to interact with them. Like, they're my author friends, so like we'll chat about like book related stuff till really late at night, or they're readers who are reading my trilogy and then going out and spreading the word of like their excitement about it. And each one of those people just means so much to me. And they're why I've been able to grow my following online, right? They have gone out and championed my work, and supported me and shouted from the rooftops. And like, I could not possibly like thank them enough for that, because that means so much to me. And so I think it, like, building out like that community and like what support looks like just really comes down to authenticity. Like, by being myself, by being kind and gracious and welcoming, I've naturally attracted other people who are like that. And I've just built a really healthy bubble for myself online, which can be like, not to be underrated. You need that healthy bubble, because as soon as it gets past that bubble is when all of the like toxicity and the negativity and the doubt and the anxiety are waiting for you. And so having like a littler community that I can go to know like they're going to pick me up, they're going to hype me up, and I do the same for them, right? It's reciprocated. It's not one-sided. Means so much, and like cannot be understated. Who else? I think that's it. Oh, my parents. Oh my gosh. How in the world could I not mention my parents? I'm so sorry, Mom and Dad. If you see this YouTube video, no, I did think of you immediately.
It
and
just
then
was the
didn't say
obvious
it.
answer, right? Like, we just assumed that was in the mix.
Yes. And my parents. My mom, we were traveling for a family vacation separately at different airports, and we like meet up, and she's like, so I started, like, I was reading your book, and this person started talking to me, and I just went, do you like to read? And she sold my book to a random stranger, just like hyped my book up and was like, you know, if you go over here and you buy it, like, it supports my daughter. She writes.
That's so cool.
So get yourself a mom who's like willing to sell your book to a stranger at an airport in less than 5 minutes interaction. Like, that's like the ultimate hype person. And my my dad is so funny. My dad is not a reader. He is trying to read my book, and like, that in and of itself just means so much to me, that he is putting himself out there into a place that he's not comfortable, and he is giving it a shot. But every time he always tells me he's waiting for the movie. He's like, you're gonna get a movie deal someday. And he's like, when you do, he's like, I'll watch the movie of this because I think it's cool. He's like, but I just have a hard time reading. And you know, when you're busy, it happens. It's all good. But yeah, I do appreciate my parents. I feel like I should have said that first.
All good.
It made it in.
I think too, like, this is the concept that I've been thinking about a lot. It's like the difference between a cheerleader and a champion, and you need to have both, right? You need to have those people that are cheerleaders that are like, yeah, you can do it, go get them. But then you also need champions that are like, hey, my daughter wrote a book, do you like reading? You should buy this book. Because without those people like helping to spread the message, you know, your area of impact, no matter if that's writing or speaking or music or like whatever passion it is that you're pursuing, if you only have cheerleaders, you know, your range of visibility is only so much. And I think, you know, the message of your books and the storyline is so cool and so important that I'm so glad that you're able to also have those champions to just increase that influence. I think that's incredible.
You said that so much better than I could have. You took what I said in 5 minutes and said it in 30 seconds. So
I've been thinking about that concept a lot. So it's you know, it was like, you know, I've been working on these books for 6 years, but it really only looks like one. It's kind of that same.
No, I think
that's
it's
so cool.
I think it's super important. And I think also like taking the time to educate yourself. In that little hiatus I had, I spent a lot of time working on myself, and a lot of that included reading self-help books. And you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, you're gonna do a whole spiel on self-help. Yes,
Right.
if you want. this entire shelf here is off camera that you can't, actually you can't see. It's the shelf here. The whole thing is full of self-help books.
That's a big shelf.
That's a big shelf. Yeah. I've read a lot of books. But I think it's because it's like super important to recognize your own like bad tendencies and your good tendencies and how to like nurture both towards like optimizing yourself. You know, how I've gotten to where I've gotten is because I worked a lot on myself, right? It wasn't just like so.
So you have your first book out already. Your next book comes out in a couple of days. And actually, when I post this, it will be out today. So you should go order your copy now. And we'll tell you where at the end for sure. But I was one of the very fortunate advanced reader copy people for the second book. And I'm going to post this in my review. But honestly, like I laughed. I told myself not to cry, and it totally would have been okay to give myself permission. And I cannot tell you how many times I almost threw this book across the room. And I told my fiance, like, why would she do that? Like, this just happened, and then this happened. And so like, I was very emotionally involved in this book. And in the last book, you kind of like wrapped it up nicely. And we knew we were expecting a second book. And I was like, okay, I can wait. This one, I'm like, okay, you better be releasing the third book next week. So on that note, when can we expect the final book in the trilogy? Because I am dying to know. I'm not exaggerating, by the way. I was like literally about
to. It's like it warms my little gremlin heart to know that like I can stir all of the emotions in the readers, not just the sad ones, but also the angsty, like how could you do this?
Yes, multiple
type
times.
emotions. I'm late summer, fall of next year. That's my goal. So there's going to be, I know there's going to be a year downtime between, because I basically wrote the first book in, what is that, like 16 months. I wrote book 2 in 10 months. And I need like a little break, not gonna lie. I'm going to try to give myself November and December to rest. And then I'm going to start back up in January and write and edit book 3 and hopefully have it out, you know, by late summer, early fall. We'll see. I'll keep everybody up.
Just an excuse to reread the first 2. So
yeah, you just gotta digest everything in the first 2 books. There's so many threads. I need the time because I've left a lot of breadcrumbs that I want to weave into the final book. So I just need the time to like pick them up.
Yeah.
And put them all in there. But I'm excited. It'll be a really good trilogy ending.
It's fine. No, that's so cool. Yeah, I just think it's so amazing. Like you had this idea and your friend kind of encouraged you to do it, and then you put in the universe like what you wanted to see in the world. And I think that is just absolutely incredible, a model to be followed for sure. So to other people who are listening to this that are like, you know what, maybe I could do the thing. Like, what's some advice and encouragement that you could give to those people?
Just do it. So a little bit every day, or when you have the energy, because maybe it's not an everyday thing, right? I work best in sprints because I am a procrastinator otherwise. So I need that pressure on myself. But really just find like what works best for you and pursue the dream. And that could be art, writing, any creative endeavor, any passion. If you just put a little bit of effort, 30 minutes a day, couple hours a week into that passion, you will see yourself exponentially grow in that skill set over time. So for me, I think like that was the most important thing. I am a much better writer today than I was in 2018. And that's because I just kept writing. If I had stopped after my first draft in 2018, one, it would be a really bad book. Nobody's first draft is good. Nobody's first attempt at art or music or public speaking. Your first attempt is never going to be good. It's your first attempt. No one's naturally amazing off the bat at anything. So if you have to,
I want their number.
Right? Yeah.
Tell me all your secrets.
give me the juice, whatever it is that you
Right.
use, like your aura, just like let me waft into it. Um, but no, it's not going to be your first, might not even be your 10th. If you're me, it wasn't even your 100th. You just have to keep doing it. If you're passionate about it and you love it, just keep going. Do not give up. You will get there eventually. Eventually, you will find what you enjoy about it. If it's like a little niche of that specific thing, like dark fantasy, that kind of crept up on me. I honestly didn't think I would like writing such like darkness and monsters and stuff, but I realized like that combined the things about horror and thrillers that I love and all the things about fantasy that I love. And I was like, what if we just put these together? And that just made me really happy. And I never would have found that if I hadn't kept going.
Yeah.
And so I think like that's my best advice. Start and then just never stop. Just keep
Yeah.
trying.
That's
You will
so good.
land there eventually.
Yeah, and I like how you talked about, just keep doing a little bit. Oftentimes we get stuck on this big picture of like, this is what I want the end to look like. But if sometimes you just take a step back and say, okay, what's the one next thing that I can do? You often find that the path that you were going to set out on, you have all these like weird little loops and turns and things. And sometimes just taking that one next step is like, oh, that gives me clarity on what to do after this and kind of builds that momentum. So I love that, just like little bit at a time, keep at it. You will definitely get better as you do it. And the end result, honestly, is going to be bigger than you thought it could be at the beginning. So, oh, I love that.
Absolutely. And sometimes that one step is actually a step back. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
giving yourself the grace to take a break or reevaluate, pivot. It's okay. Like if you started in one endeavor and you're partway down your path and you realize like, actually, I'm kind of like veering a little bit more towards this endeavor. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Go try that path for a little bit. Just give
Yeah.
yourself the grace to do that. We're all naturally inquisitive people. So it's okay to explore lots of different things. It's good to explore different avenues for the same thing. Maybe one path towards the goal isn't the right one and you find the alternative path and that one works better for you.
Yeah.
Don't limit yourself based on what you think you have to do. And also don't compare your day 10 to someone's like year 10 in the same endeavor.
Yeah.
That
And it's
is,
so hard to know when that's happening because you don't
yes.
see all the back end stuff. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, you like, if I looked at where I was at when I just started my Bookstagram in January, and I saw people who had been on there for 10 years and they have so much more content out there. They're so polished, they're so confident. They've got so many books. They're like on their 10th book. If I looked at that and I said, they did this, they started the same month as me. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I would have been dead in the water immediately.
Yeah.
You have to recognize that like everyone starts where you're starting at. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
some people are a little bit naturally better at it at the start, but with time and with practice and with consistency, you can be really good at the thing too, whatever it is. Um, Yodeling, playing the ukulele, whatever. Um, Pick any obscure hobby. You can be really good at it with time. It does like, and you can make up a new hobby and you could become a pioneer for it. And that also still is going to take time to perfect, even if it's
Yeah.
new and it came from you and it's all original. So I think just don't let comparison shut you down. I think that's like so easy to fall
Yeah.
into comparison traps. So just recognize where you're at and where someone else you're at, completely different places. It doesn't even matter if they started a month ahead of you and they feel light years away.
Mm-hmm.
Their path is different than your path, and that's totally okay.
Yeah.
I think you just have to focus on what you're doing and just keep doing it. Just don't give up. That is like super important.
Love it, love it, love it. And I'm so looking forward to book 3. Like, I cannot even tell you. So I'm really excited about next year. Um, awesome. Like, this was so good and so many good little nuggets of information. So thank you so much for sharing your process, for joining me. This is like the first edition, and I cannot wait to continue to do more because this was absolutely amazing. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. For anyone looking to buy Lacie's books, she actually has a website, which is laciemloubooks.com. You can order Children of Gods and Monsters. You can start with Prophecy of Blood and Flames, which definitely you should start because the second book is good, but it makes way more sense with the first book, obviously. So I will put a link to that in the description, so that way you guys can go check out all things Lacie amazingness. And yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us today. And I look forward to future interviews. If you have somebody you know that is chasing a dream, or you are chasing a dream and you would like to be on the show, just send me a message and I will post a link to that as well. So thanks so much for joining us, guys. Lacie, thank you so much. Love you dearly, and so excited for all of your success.
Thank you. Thank you, Audrey, so much for inviting me. It was wonderful. Have a fantastic rest of your day.
Yay! Bye, guys.
Bye.